Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Councilwoman Melly Garthwaite is absent. Councilman Brian Locks.
Brian Locks, Council at Large, present.
Councilwoman Ann Heffernan.
Councilwoman Ann Heffernan, 1st District, present.
Councilwoman Ruby Melton.
Councilwoman Ruby Melton, 2nd District, present.
Councilwoman Sarah Akbarali.
Councilwoman Sarah Akbarali, 3rd District, present.
Councilman Gary Donovan.
Councilman Gary Donovan, 4th District, present.
Councilman Edward McMillan.
Good evening, Councilman Edward McMillan, 5th District.
Councilwoman Dawn Callahan.
Councilwoman Dawn Callahan, 6th District, present.
Councilwoman Catherine Tucker.
Councilwoman Catherine Tucker, 7th District, present.
Councilman Christopher Vargo.
Councilman Christopher Vargo, 8th District, present.
Councilwoman Katie Muller.
Councilwoman Katie Muller, 9th District, present.
Councilman Stephen Johnstone is absent. And Councilman Nicholas Pascal.
Councilman Nicholas Pascal, present.
And we have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Fantastic. We do have a quorum. First up, we have a public hearing from the Finance Committee. Councilwoman Akbarali.
Thank you, Councilman. The time is now 6:57, and your Committee on Finance is now opened for a public hearing on Finance Committee Communication D from the January 13th, 2025 agenda from Michael Gormany, Finance Director, regarding an ordinance authorizing the issuance of $26,289,900 bonds plus additional financing costs of the City of West Haven to meet certain fiscal 2023 to 2024 and 2024 to 2025 capital budget appropriations and making of temporary borrowings for such purposes. Does anybody from the public have any comments on this matter? Going twice. Does anybody in the public have any comments regarding this matter? Going 3 times. Does anybody in the public have any comments regarding this matter? Seeing there are none, public hearing is now closed at 6:58.
Thank you very much. We will now enter into public session. The time is...
Nope. Gotta wait 2 more minutes.
Oh, that's right. I just want to leave. That's right.
We'll go into...
All right, we are back to council as a whole. We will now enter into public session at this time. The time is 7 o'clock. Would anyone like to speak before the city council? Ms. Balteri?
Hi, good evening. Pat Bollettieri, 215 West Walk. We were told at the January 13th City Council meeting that thousands of school laptops have to be replaced. The lifetime of a laptop is much longer than 10 years. They hardly ever break. So the only other reason for replacing one is to run software that is beyond the hardware's capacity. So unless our students are mining Bitcoin, their computers should last a long time. Software drives the hardware purchase. That's your meat and potatoes. But there was no discussion of software at the last council meeting. The computers, the network, the whiteboards, these are just empty shells which have no value in themselves. Since software drives the hardware purchase, there is no inherent reason to replace the hardware. There is, however, an insidious reason why Chromebooks, which are just web surfing laptops, have to be replaced, and that is the planned obsolescence imposed by Google. There is no powerful new technology involved. Just like the milk you buy in the grocery store, your Chromebook comes with an expiration date. This period is determined by Google based on profitability metrics. At the end of 8 years or 10 years or whatever the period is, Google no longer updates its bundled software, and you're forced to get a new computer. So you're basically getting a new web browser. Beyond the wasted money, just think of the electronic waste generated. It's not a sustainable practice. Google has captured the classroom and has made us dependents. And our children's data is in Google's cloud, and I'm skeptical. Why don't we have textbooks? Why do teachers have to spend their own money on pencils? As someone who has spent almost her entire career in corporate IT and who had been a high school math teacher, I believe that when it comes to math, a textbook is a must. The textbook can be online as a PDF or comparable format, as long as it can be printed if the student wants. Technology can be great if used as a supplemental tool, but as an end in itself, it's a burden. I don't know if Google's classroom tools are an administrative nightmare. Only the teachers and students can answer that. But if we are automatically choosing the technological solution in favor of tried and true practices that have stood the test of time, the result will be an over-reliance on technology and, in my opinion, a decline in academic rigor and critical thinking. When Superintendent Cavallaro stated there is no turning back, I hope he was just using a figure of speech. If not, then we are captives of technology. We have to be able to dial back on tech and to make decisions which are in our children's best interests and not in Google's.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak before the City Council? For the second time, would anyone like to speak before the City Council? For the third and final time, would anyone like to speak before the City Council? Public session is now closed at 7:04. At this time, we will convene the 1/27/25 regularly scheduled council meeting at also 7:04. I am looking for a motion to approve the Journal of 1/13/25.
So moved.
So moved. Do I have a second? Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. And at this time, I'll have the council clerk hand out the communications for this evening.
We have before us Communication A from the tax collector regarding overpayment refunds for January 2025, which will be filed with tonight's minutes. And we have Communication B also from the tax collector regarding overpayment refunds for the month of January 2025, will be filed with tonight's minutes. Communication C from Mayor Dorinda Borer regarding a request to refer the proposal from Ideal Group LLC, Ideal, for the redevelopment of Style School to the West Haven Planning and Zoning Commission, which will be assigned to the Public Lands Committee, Chairman Donovan. And that concludes our communications for this evening, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. First up in the whole council, we have Chief Terenzio from the Allentown Fire Department and others. Chief, can you come to the podium? We're going to be talking about the community risk reduction program that we were going to get an update on.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this evening and give you an update on the progress of the program that was developed over a year ago. I also have with me this evening our new Fire Marshal, Keith Flood. I don't think he's a stranger to any of you. He's been here. And one of our captains who is going to be also assisting and coordinating the program. Since receiving the actual funding as of November, after being awarded the grant, we have, in the interim, have sent 3 additional staff to get certified to do fire investigations and inspection. That takes about 8 months, and we have completed that. So out of the 4 tactics that we wanted to reach, we've attained 3 of them. One of the most important ones is that we have actually split the responsibilities of fire marshal and deputy chief that was shared by our previous deputy chief. We have now split again with Fire Marshal Flood here. He's going to be solely focusing on fire marshal details, and we are in the process of looking for and appointing a new deputy chief to help us run the department. So the current staffing model that was in existence a year ago has now already been improved. The other issue that was that we needed to address was getting the staff certified, and we've accomplished that. And also in the interim, we've also started to do neighborhood canvassing and identifying possible locations where what we suspect to be illegal attic and basement apartments exist. And with Keith coming on board, we are going to be looping in and attempting to get the other land use agencies involved with us, such as the building department, health department, zoning, so we can find and correct the issues that are hazardous to the people that are occupying those spaces that were originally constructed that were not meant to be habited. We plan on hitting the ground running this coming month, now that Keith is in place, and all 3 of our code enforcement specialists have been certified and are anxious and ready to go. And with that, I'll answer any questions that you may have.
Does anyone have any questions for Chief Terenzio? Councilwoman Heffernan.
Your new fire marshal is not a stranger to me. I just want to know, is that position a union position or is it a management position?
Right now, it's a management position until such time that I think it's also imperative that you all understand that this whole process was also negotiated through an MOU with the union to allow us to do this because it's a win-win for everyone. It's a win-win for the department, the city, and it's a win-win for the personnel because it's giving them an opportunity to get additional training and further career development in fire protection.
It keeps them safe too. It's also for their safety as well.
It's going, absolutely, Councilwoman. It's going to, when they're out doing these surveys and these inspections, it's also giving them an opportunity to take a view of the location, hopefully not, but hopefully before a fire actually happens. So it's kind of like a pre-fire survey as well. They'll become familiar with it before they have to really go to work inside the hazardous atmosphere.
Thank you, Chief.
Yep.
First, Councilwoman Callahan.
Hi, Chief. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. I think we're all excited for this, especially to reiterate what everyone else is thinking is the safety, number one, and to have more hands on deck. Have you been to any locations yet, and if so, how many?
Yes, and I would like to call on Captain Panza and Fire Marshal Flood to come and answer some of those questions.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Captain Panza, Fire Marshal.
Fire Marshal Flood.
What can I do for you?
What was the first question that was raised?
The question was,
as far as going in, and have you been to any locations yet that there have been violations, and if so, how many?
Yeah, we've actually come across at least 2 or 3 in approximately the last couple of months. One of them involved a small kitchen fire, which led us to some inappropriate bedroom locations in the structure. A couple other ones were uncovered through medical calls, where we found that it just so happened to be UNH student housing off campus. They weren't being treated the way that they should, and the landlords were overloading. So these things have all been addressed through the building officials, planning and zoning.
And going forward, what is the plan to actually be able to enter these places?
So, one of the stumbling blocks in this whole process is trying to do this legally without violating the Fourth Amendment and violating people's privacy. So, a lot of the times you're going to get these cases of illegal dwelling units by virtue of the engine companies and the truck companies and the rescue companies going to the properties on a medical call. They see something that they're trained on. Hey, this doesn't look quite right. This may be an illegal dwelling unit. They'll get me involved. We'll start the process with the building department, the blight, the zoning, the health department, and go about it that way. The one thing we don't want to do is put any more liability on the city and going into these places without any kind of due process and, violating the Fourth Amendment. We don't want to do that.
Right. So
does that answer?
It does.
Kind of
yes.
answer.
It kind of. I know it's a slippery slope for sure. But if you or when you go in and there is a violation, do these people become displaced?
So, in my experience, for those of you who don't know, I was in the Center District for 27 years, the fire marshal there for 11. Then I did 3 years in West Shore as a fire marshal as well. So, in my experience in doing this, what normally happens is if you have an illegal dwelling unit, we would go in and we'd have to vacate that unit if it's not a safe unit to occupy. In doing so, what ends up happening is you have a relocation issue, which a lot of times with the building department, we can kind of get them to go to family members or other places where it doesn't become a city issue. Mm-hmm. But legally, the city ends up having to relocate some people. It doesn't happen all the time, and I can tell you in my 15 years of doing this, we've probably relocated maybe a dozen times in doing this. But there is that kind of slippery slope and the kind of where we need to make sure that these people are not on the street.
So it happens immediately. If you were to go in, say tomorrow when there was a kitchen fire, like you said, and you see that there are
So if we see an illegal basement apartment, for instance, right, we go in and there's not the egress or exiting is not correct, and we see that it's really unsafe to be habitable, then we would bring in the building department and the other necessary agencies, and we would legally deem that building. The building department would put an uninhabitable sign on there.
Okay.
It's immediate. So that the issue is that you don't want to leave that illegal dwelling unit, right, with any more liability on the city. We leave there and say, hey, Mr. Owner, you need to come in here and take care of your property and put somebody up. If we leave there and then they have a fire, now the city's on the hook. So that's what we don't want to do. So right now we're trying to formulate that plan on how we do this step by step with each independent agency within the city so that we get it right.
And then does everybody have to leave that premise, or
No.
just the illegal apartments?
It's usually what we normally find is either an attic apartment or a basement apartment. Usually the other units are usually pretty good, maybe smoke detector here and there, but normally it's just whatever unit is not
In
legal.
most cases, we'll put in smoke detectors and we'll make sure the front door and back door are unobstructed and all the hallways are unobstructed. 9 times out of 10, that'll get us through the week and get the building department and zoning in there.
Oh, I see. And then, I don't know if you can answer this, but how long, once there's a violation, does the owner have to remedy it?
Well, so
Like,
that's
you would go back in and reinspect?
Yeah, so that's dependent on. So sometimes it's in a non-conforming building, and what I mean by that is it's a 2-family building listed with the city tax assessor, and they're using it as a 4.
Gotcha.
Right. So that would have to go through all the necessary steps. It would have to go through zoning, it would have to go through the building department, make sure the proper permits are pulled, through the tax assessor's office. Can they have that family within that area of the town? So there's more steps
Yeah, there's a lot.
to do that, so
Okay, and then you would go back in and reinspect.
absolutely.
All right, thank you very much.
Councilman Vargo?
Hi, good evening. Does this also apply to structures that are in the yard? Just say like a she shed.
Accessory?
Yeah, I guess that's what you would call it. I would call
Yeah,
it
I
a
know.
she shed.
I know the state calls them accessory dwelling unit, ADUs. So that would, dependent on how it's built through the building department, they may be a separate dwelling unit within the space. And if it's separate, obviously the building department would have had something to do with it and made sure it was code compliant with the fire marshal's office. So it may not. To answer your question, it may not be affected.
It may not be affected. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Councilman Vargo?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate the updates. I know that you've only had 2 or 3 violations that you found so far, but in your experience, would a violation typically be an illegal dwelling unit, a full unit, or would it be, somebody that turned a small room into a makeshift bedroom on a main level?
That may or may not be a violation.
Okay.
So there's specific, for instance, the city adopted a regulation, an ordinance that says you can't have more than 4 unrelated people that live in a dwelling unit. The fire code says 6, but the city, we were having so many problems with illegal dwelling units and more than unrelated people that the city. So what happens is you can go into a house, the captain can go in a house on a call and say, we have 5 bedrooms that are independently locked. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a code violation.
Mm-hmm.
It may be an ordinance violation, but it may not be a code violation. That's just one snapshot. But a lot of times a violation could be the fire door doesn't close properly, or the smoke detectors don't operate properly, or there's an electrical just some common.
And have all the violations that you've addressed so far, has that been the result of an inspection following an event, or is it something that you've preemptively seen?
No, these were all following events.
Okay.
For instance, the house that had the kitchen fire, we found sleeping conditions that I wouldn't recommend in that house as a result of the fire. Once we go in and we extinguish the fire, we check the rest of the structure to make sure everything else is safe, and that's when we found basement bedrooms. And actually, in that particular house, we found annexed bedrooms that were off in a place where there was no other way to get to them. You had one way in and one way out. In this instance, what we did is install detectors for the remainder of the evening, and we had all those rooms, mattresses were removed. We had them sign information stating that they would not occupy those rooms. At this particular time, that house is actually being refurbished.
Are you finding that the occupants are generally not related to each other, or are you finding that they're larger?
In some instances, yes. In the instances of, for instance, off-campus housing, it tends to be the case. So far to date, both the occupants and the landlords have been cooperative.
Okay. Typically, how long do you think that if the city were to have to pay for relocation, how long is that typically last for?
Could be anywhere from a couple days to a couple weeks.
It's at a local hotel, I imagine.
Yeah, usually they put them up in a local hotel.
Okay. Now, I guess my last question is going back to the unrelated and related family members. If a family has, let's say several kids, and one of them doesn't like being on the main level, a teenager that wants to go into the basement, is that are we considering that a violation, or are you kind of letting maybe that go if it's not?
So the violation in that,
Yep.
when they go into the basement, normally if you can typically see that little basement rectangular window that everybody has in their basement, that's not a compliant, what we call emergency escape and rescue window. So
Okay.
you have to have emergency escape rescue window, has to be 5.7 square feet. There's specific requirements to that. Yeah.
we're finding that a lot. You know, even with multiple bedrooms, they're sticking them in areas that do not have a window at all. So their only way out is through that door, and if there's a fire on the other side, you know,
You're not
all
getting
are
out.
affected. You're not going anywhere.
So
Nor are we getting in.
right. So we're really going that deep then. If you're there in an event, you see that, a 16-year-old wants to just be away from mom and dad, and there's going into the basement. That's a violation.
Basement, attic, yeah, that's a violation.
What do you do in that situation if they're related, if they're children?
Have them remove the bed, sleep in another area of the house until we can, meet with the owner of the property and rectify the situation.
And obviously explain why it's a hazard.
Okay.
Do your best you can to try and educate the family in that instance to the fact that this person staying where they are really is a risk to them. Basements can be very dangerous because that's where the house utilities are as well.
Right. So I assume that we don't go so far as to relocate the a parent they stay in the house but just somewhere else, and it's a little cramped. Okay.
And we try to do an education. We try to be salesmen for fire prevention. We don't come in there swinging, oh, we're the fire department, you're in violation, and you're going to do what we say. That's not how it works. We get people to buy in through a good salesmanship. Then once we get done what we need to get done, we can almost be rest assured that they will continue, once we're not there any longer, to practice good fire safe operations.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Donovan?
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, gentlemen. How are you?
Sir?
First and foremost, Chief, thanks for coming here tonight and doing this. And as we know, as you know, that you're the last deputy chief wore many hats, did an absolute fabulous job, and the shoes for him to fill were tough. But I said we got one of the shoes we could fill that no problem. And you said it before, you hit the trifecta now. You've done all 3 districts, so you are definitely the man that knows what he's doing. And Captain, I know you do a fantastic job, as well as the whole department. My question: when we relocate these family, or this could be a person or 2 people or whomever, and the city has to front that, do we send that to the landlord? Do you know? Do we get reimbursed from that landlord?
Usually that goes to a lien. That usually
Okay.
equates to a lien on a property.
And
they
do
can't-
you know if there's fines that are sent to the landlord for continuous violations? Because I know, I'll clean it up, as you guys know, and maybe 6 months later or the next semester. I'm not saying it's that type of thing, but
Continuous violations would usually go to the housing court
okay.
at that point.
All right. Well, again, thank you all for what you do, and Allentown is in better hands now with having Mr. Flood here. So, thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Do you encourage the citizens of Allentown to, like, in a see something, say something capacity, or is it something you steer away from, where you just want to, get these incidents coming from the visits that you make?
We encourage people, if they see something they feel is unsafe, to let us know.
Okay.
And the reason is twofold. One, you're concerned for the occupants, right? We don't want them to succumb to a tragedy. But 2, if they're doing something that's dangerous, not only do they put themselves in danger, but they're also going to put their neighbors in danger, because that house is going to do a lot of different things once it catches on fire. So,
Okay.
which we do our best to keep the lives safe as well as all the properties.
Right. So now the next question is, if they do see something, how do they get a hold of you?
They can contact the fire marshal's office directly. They can call 911. They can file an anonymous complaint.
Let us know. And this is just part of how we're finding out about these locations. Once we really start getting out and getting the canvassing done, as we go by and hit the suspected targets, we anticipate we'll be finding a lot more. However, it's going to be very critical that wherever we do go in, that it's going to be quality as opposed to quantity. We're going to have to throttle it down so we don't get ahead of ourselves. Because I was personally involved when I was at a previous employ. I was a deputy fire marshal, and the city was held accountable for. I didn't do it. Was held accountable for
Caveat.
Having gone into a property 2 and 3 times and didn't complete it. And ultimately a fire happened and people lost their lives, the city was held accountable. That was one of the first things on my mind coming here, and want to be sure that that same thought process, philosophy is applied.
Okay. Any other questions for the first time? Okay, we'll go with Councilman Bargo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one more question. Chief, you may recall I was a big proponent of this when it first came before us. After listening to you gentlemen, I know that was the right decision. And my question is as you're progressing through this process, what are the opportunities to have you write the book on this so that we can use that for the other two districts?
Not hard at all. I'd be more than willing to put our heads together and share it with the other districts. Obviously, any department can do it. There are steps to be followed, as you know. I don't have the authority to tell the other districts this is what you're going to do. Here I got buy-in. I'd have to get buy-in, and hopefully they too will join in that effort. It is interesting to know. That was shared by one of our attendees to the training was firefighter Kevin Scanlon shared with me that the fire chief in Hamden was going to be reaching out to us to find out more about how we're getting this done because he's running into a roadblock with getting enough people to do what they need to do. There's not a fire department, correct me if I'm wrong, there's not a fire department around that's in the state that's going to be able to say, we're meeting all of our state mandated responsibilities. You'd have to have almost every firefighter on the job able to get into a building once a year and find these violations. It's impossible. But what will protect us is that we've developed a program, a policy, and we are making every attempt to do it and meet it. We may not meet it all, but we're making an attempt. And that is the one thing that I've been told by legal counsel that's the one thing that's going to keep you out of the courts.
Thank you, Chief. Gentlemen, thank you so much for everything you all are doing.
Thank you all for having us and your support. Appreciate it.
Good.
Just one more, Gina. Sorry. No, it's fine. We're not done. I always get thrown in the back. It's fine. I just want to, because I was at your last meeting and with Allentown, and what I learned from the chief that I think everyone, it's kind of educational, is that what you had said real quickly, but I just want to say again, I think it's important, is that a room, again, has to have a window. And that is the only way it's a legal room to sleep in. And I never knew that. So I think that's really important. And I know for us as a fire thing too, and I think it was back in the Allentown days with my grandparents, and you can still buy those ladders that just kind of fold together. You can't buy them anymore?
No, you could.
But no, they work. But so if you're upstairs,
I just don't recommend them.
And if there's a fire in the staircase,
Yeah.
you throw it out the window, and it has two little prongs, and you I'm just saying, I think it's a great little thing to have. You can laugh all you want, but it might save a life. Back in the day with the Top Finder, okay, I'm dating myself, but.
So you're just bringing
too.
up
I
past
had one.
past traumas for some of us that had to throw ladders at 2 a.m. as an 8-year-old.
Well, I might have had another reason why, and I didn't say that I did. But, okay, so the other thing is what happens if you go in and you are met with resistance? How do you proceed into that?
To actually get in?
Yeah.
So if you know
Like
that
if you know there's a violation.
if you know there's a violation, what I would do is apply for what we call an administrative search warrant through the housing court, and then as long as I can document that I have knowledge of a violation, they'll usually I'm very familiar with them at the housing court, and they know me very well. So they would usually give me the administrative search warrant. Then I would go there with the police department, and we would serve it.
Okay.
So that's
Thank you very much.
how
Thank
that.
you for your time. Thank you.
Councilwoman Tucker?
So the question I have is, Chief, you mentioned there's a process that I don't know was thoroughly described. You talked about the instances that you found when you went out on a call. and if there was a see something, say something situation. But it sounds like what you're talking about now is something that's more proactive. And can you describe what that process will look like? What are you intending to do to go out and identify these
I
things?
just issued about 2-3 weeks ago a directive for our on-duty staff. Being that it's the winter months now, they've been out checking some of the problematic hydrants that we have. But at the same time, even after the weather starts to warm up, we'll be doing neighborhood canvases and identifying locations that we know should be two-family but have multiple electric meters, antennas, curtains in the basement, curtains in the attic,
Okay.
and identify that as a target that, and check land use records to be sure that it wasn't already through the process. But if it's a two-family
I
and
see.
it's obviously a 3 or 4 family
Okay.
with multiple mailboxes, that'll be a target.
Okay.
And then we'll start the process on that as well.
Okay, so that then would result in some type of intervention, whether you try to go to the landlord or to the owner of the home, or you end up in court. So then they're given a specific time frame, I'm sure, to come clean, correct, fix it, whatever. If they don't, there's a lien placed. Does that result eventually, if they don't fix it and there's a lien, it doesn't come off? Does that result in a foreclosure? Like what?
So the lien would be effective. I think the lien process was looking at the relocation factor, that the city would be out funding for the relocation. But I think what you're talking about is if they have violations that they don't correct
Right.
in a certain amount of time, the
Right.
state fire marshal has a process and a 30-day window for a reinspection, and then after that, we would go into the abatement process further, and then we would have to go to housing court.
Okay.
And what the housing court does is it takes the onus off the city
Okay.
or the district, wherever you might be.
That's the part I was trying to get to, because at what point does it come off of the responsibility of you in the city?
Yeah, so once it goes to housing court, and then usually once every month or once every 2 months, we check in with the owner, see what their progress is. If they have no progress, we answer to the housing court, the prosecutors. So there's good communication there.
The whole crux of it is that we try to get compliance voluntarily
Right.
and try to be salespeople. And if that doesn't work, then we use the bat.
Thank you.
What's that?
I'm all set. Thank you, Chief.
Councilwoman Melton.
Hi. I'm new to this, so I haven't heard your past presentation on this, but this is a wonderful program. I'm curious, do you do any community outreach? I mean, I see that you're doing the canvassing and you're getting a lot of the information through these events and through your own internal processes. What kind of community outreach do you do so that you can, sort of tell people you really ought to have a window, or, know that we will be looking for these types of things, or here are the things we're going to be looking for, that sort of thing? How do you educate the public and the landlords and the owners and folks to let them know, well, this is a violation, and you ought not to be doing such things?
Every fire department, including the 3 separate fire departments in the city, take every opportunity to get in touch with the public. One of the biggest events that we do collectively with the other 2 departments is have a fire expo every October, in which fire marshal divisions of those 3 districts, primarily headed by Fire Marshal Flood, discuss how to get out of your home safely. Our other community outreach is that we do a certified child passenger safety seat installation program free of charge. That requires sending individuals for 4-day training with retraining every 2 or 3 years, I think. That's one of our community outreaches, and I encourage our on-duty staff to get out in the fire trucks and go through the neighborhoods, whether it's checking a hydrant, whether it's doing a canvass of the neighborhoods, whether it's going to get a meal. They interact with the public. That's part of their job. And I brought 2 of them right over here that also encourage that as well. Fire departments no longer sit behind the garage doors or sit in front of the station. They're out on the fire trucks because they're very noticeable, and children gravitate to them, and so do their parents, and that's the opportunity we take to educate them. And every fire truck has on board fire prevention literature to pass out and hand out.
So I think one of the other factors I think we're going to have to use in this plan of attack is using the fair rent commission, I believe, right? We have in the city that's kind of newly functioning or re-functioning now as of I think last year or the 18 months ago. So I think utilizing that to kind of get the word out to the, because it, you know, we have landlords involved and other, you know, rent adversaries. So if we can get that word out to them, hey, listen, we want to make sure that the people are safe. We don't want to see illegal dwelling units. So I think utilizing that from an educative standpoint.
Councilman McMillan, you all set, or did you? Okay. Councilwoman Tucker.
Any thought about? I love how when the mayor has an announcement to make, she goes live on social media.
Mm-hmm.
So, is there an opportunity, since this is a new program, since it's not across all the 3 fire districts, it's just in Allentown, and it's new? Any thought about, you know, just putting a blast out there, explaining this to people and giving them a heads up that this is what's coming, this is what you're doing, and maybe posting it on social media and on the city's website?
I have a press release ready to go,
Yeah.
and I have not let it out yet until I was assured that we're all in place ready to really hit it and do it full force. But it's ready to go. And I appreciate for that suggestion, because I'll be honest with you, I didn't think about it.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none. First, I'd like to thank you for coming down, but I also want to say I appreciate that you reached out to the council and asked if you could make an update instead of the other way around, because we'd like to see more of that from the departments. But let the record show you reached out to us and said, "I'm proud of this and I want to share it with you." So thank you for that. And gentlemen,
Thank you for listening. And,
absolutely.
this is your part of it, not mine.
Right. Have a great night. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, first committee we have up is Finance Committee. Council or Chairwoman Akbar Ali.
Thank you, Chairman. The time is now 7:38, and your Committee on Finance is now in session. Members present are Councilman Vargo, Councilman Locks, Councilwoman Tucker, and myself, Councilwoman Akbar Ali, as Chairwoman. On our agenda, we have Communication D from the January 13, 2025 agenda from Michael Gormany, Finance Director, regarding an ordinance authorizing the issuance of $26,289,900 bonds plus additional financing costs of the City of West Haven to meet certain fiscal 2023 to 2024 and 2024 to 2025 capital budget appropriations and the making of temporary borrowings for such purposes. I'd like to bring this out for discussion. Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Gormany, do you mind coming up to the podium, please?
All right. Good evening, Council. I believe we discussed at length at the January 13th meeting. But just in case there are any further questions, I do have the city's financial advisor, Bill Lindsay, here to answer any questions, as well as our bond counsel, attorney Michael Adriana from Pullman and Comley. Again, this is really just an ordinance authorizing us to go out and borrow for the fiscal year 2023-2024 projects. Again, that's around $12.5 million. We'll go out to market in March of this year, and then also giving us the authorization for the fiscal year 2024-2025 capital projects, which we'll be doing later on down the line towards the end of this year or most likely in March of 2026. Again, both of these budgets were approved by City Council already, so we're really just looking to go out so we can borrow the money at some point to either replenish what we spent on projects or get the money so we can begin projects. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Gormany. I wasn't here in the last meeting, but I did review the notes, and I just wanted to make sure that we're doing this in 2 phases.
Yes, correct. 2 phases. The first phase is the 2023-2024 phase, which again is about $12.5 million rounded for the projects that were approved during the 2023-2024 cycle. Just as a reminder, we asked for both years just in case. Again, the market is unpredictable. So let's say in December, we get a really good opportunity that Mr. Lindsay and Mr. Adriana say we should act on it. We want to be able to act at that point. If that doesn't happen, we are normally a year behind in borrowing, so we would stick with our normal schedule of February to March of 2026. But again, the second authorization is just in case a really good opportunity arises that we believe we should act on towards the end of the calendar year, most likely.
Thank you. I'd like to open this up to the committee. Does anybody on the committee have any questions for Mr. Gormany?
Yeah,
Councilman Laux?
Yeah, just a comment. So, obviously, this came up at the last council meeting. I sent you a lengthy email, which is typically what I do. You're kind enough to pick up the phone. You called me. You explained everything to me. So, it was great. So, I understand perfectly what you guys are trying to achieve. Mayor Board did say that she was sending Bill to the last meeting, and you didn't show. But I didn't need you. I certainly didn't need you, but because the finance director answered all my questions, so I hope you didn't come here specifically to answer the questions that I asked about. So I appreciate that, Mike, and I'm good. And thanks for the explanation last meeting.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All set? All set? Any other questions on the committee? Or from the committee? I'd like to open this up to the entire council.
Wait a minute, I just have something.
Sure.
Well, and I don't know that you can answer this, because I think the last part of the discussion we had, the mayor was here, and we asked questions about the redesignation of the funds from the Board of Ed, right? Because part of this was them redesignating funds, and it had to do with the windows and doors. And we questioned whether or not the doors were still going to be a part of that, because I get it that we want to move the money and use it for something different, but then you have this 5-year period, or however long this period is going to be, where there's nothing funded to. Are they going to come back later and ask for that funding? And that was my concern about the doors. This is a safety issue. We wanted to know more about that, and the mayor was going to come back and give us that information. Did you hear anything in any way about that?
I did not hear anything in particular. I know the mayor and the superintendent were talking about that particular issue. I think, based on my recollection, Mr. Cavallero mentioned that they did not feel that there was any safety or any other issues with redesignating that funding for those 2 particular projects and moving it to technology.
So based on, I know this isn't your stuff.
Yes.
So this is hard.
Yeah.
Because my concern is, I'd like to know with some more certainty than that, in my opinion, that we're making the right decision about redesignating funds that were earmarked to correct doors and windows in a school that's probably not going to get a whole lot of funding in the near future, right? So if we take these funds and move them, and those things were never remedied, where are we? So that's a concern, and I want it on the record, and I just don't think that we got a good enough answer. So I'll stop there.
All right, understood.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Any other questions? Councilman Fargo?
I kind of do want to belabor this a little bit. Did the Board of Education, the elected body, voted to redesignate those funds?
Yes, they did. I believe at their November meeting.
Are we required to affirm that or ratify that?
So you have to remember that the Board of Education does not have any borrowing power within the city. So that's why their projects are within the city's capital projects, because technically it's the city's borrowing. So that's why it has to come before the council. Even though they approve it, it still has to come before the council for approval.
I'm assuming the answer is no, but do you know what information the Board of Education received when they made their decision?
I was not at that meeting, so I'm not sure. I know it was presented by superintendent and their previous finance director, Matt Cavallaro.
My opinion is, far be it from me to disagree with their decision, that's their wheelhouse. But to Councilwoman Tucker's point, we do have some concerns over the safety and security of these schools, which are aging, and we know that these projects are necessary. And I understand that Superintendent Cavallaro is interested in possibly exploring the idea of a new school, but that's a little ways down the road. So I'm assuming that's possible, that if we agree with this redesignation, then when we get the budget in 2 months, there may be similar projects on that.
We are in the budget process now, so I'll be honest, I haven't had any conversations yet with the Board of Education because we're so early on into the budget process. I'm not going to say there's absolutely no possibility because I just don't know, but this is the redesignation that they put in front of me.
I mean, I believe that the superintendent and his staff did their job, that they did their homework, no pun intended, but just just for our comfort level, I think that's just our, this was put on here for a reason in 23, 24, 24, 25. We just want to make sure that reason has sufficiently changed, that we're not going to be in a precarious position in a year or two, and then
any safety or any other issues that may happen with the school.
Okay.
Understood.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Or Madam Chair, I'm sorry.
It's okay. Thank you, Councilman. Any other questions for Mr. Gormany? It's out. Or it's for the whole council. Councilman Callahan?
Hi, how are you? I know I feel terrible you're in the hot seat for this, but I just want to kind of reiterate what both my colleagues have said too. I have a deep concern for Kerrigan, and since we did allocate it for these funds, and we are in the budget process, is there any way that we could still consider keeping these funds in for Kerrigan, and then when the budget comes out, we can address the issues with the Board of Ed for what they're looking for the computers? Or you can't do that?
I think that goes, well, the first part of that question is really a process question for as far as the city council collectively. What myself, Mr. Lindsay, and Mr. Adriana go out and do is we bond what is approved in front of us. So if you, as the council, decided not to approve the redesignation or whatever, we would go with the plan that was before us. Again, Mr. Cavallaro came, he spoke on the need for the technology and, felt that we could redesignate the funds. But yes, to answer your question, we bond what you guys approve because that's what we put before us. So.
And if this comes up sooner than later with the issues with the flooring and the windows and the doors,
we'd have to work with the Board of Education on a contingency plan. So if you were to approve this and something came up, we could certainly look at any past capital balances that they had available at the time to look at possible redesignation. If that was available at the time, if they had any general repairs or HVAC, or any other type of funding that may be available, we can look at that time.
I feel, do we have, if we reached out to them, do we have any kind of commitment for them that they actually had somebody look at these windows and doors and flooring and say they're safe? I don't know if that's a question you can answer.
Yeah,
Probably
that's not really a question I can answer. I'm going based off the recommendation
Okay.
of the superintendent.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Laux?
Yeah, just a comment, I guess, for the entire council that this is why it's probably hypercritical that when we go into budget season, that we have a strategy to address the Board of Education. Right? Anyway, I just think, I brought this up when he was here. You have 1.2 million, and I asked that question about kicking the can down the road, so I'm concerned as well. I just think as a council, we got to make sure that we have our ducks in a row when these things come up during budget season. Anyway, I guess my point is I'm concerned like everybody else. Are we kicking the can down the road? I think it's unclear in terms of the facts. We know that we have doors and windows that are not good. We have computers that are at their, what sounds like they are at their end of life. And then you hear whispers of a school being built. So I'm all for taking the money and putting it on technology. I guess what I don't want is a big surprise, and I think that's where us as a council have to have a strategy going into budget season. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Donovan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. If we decide to go ahead and allocate this money, right, and give you guys the opportunity to go out and get the bonding for this, and then I guess my question would be, if with the doors and the windows being an issue, can that be reallocated back to that?
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. Mike Andriana. I'm an attorney at Pullman and Comley, the city's bond counsel. With respect to your question, this comes up pretty often in municipalities where, say, you go out to the market, you issue bonds, you now have proceeds that are on hand that are not spent, and then a different project takes a priority. If that new project that has now the greater priority has been approved for bonding, there's nothing stopping the city from reallocating those proceeds to the new project. If the project that is now pressing has not been approved for bonding, it would have to go through the process through this council to get those projects approved for bonding. And once they're approved for bonding, you could reallocate the money to those projects which now have a greater need.
Okay, so the opportunity would be there for us.
Yeah, if
that comes,
if there's money available too.
Right.
Because I think when the city goes out to market, a good chunk of the money is probably going to be used to reimburse the city for expenses they've already paid towards these projects we're looking to get improved for bonding. But there will probably be some projects where there'll be money sitting in a fund, basically, and that the idea is that it'll be spent in the future when those costs come up. If priorities change and something else needs to be done, if those new projects get approved for bonding, you can handle it that way.
All right. So we'll have to, like I said, have to wait to see what the budget is before we. Thank you for that explanation. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Very welcome. Any other questions, Councilman Vargo?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to follow up on what you just said, Council. So we're essentially doing two things here. We're approving, through this resolution, we're approving the projects. We've already approved the projects through the budget process, but now we're being asked to amend that and reallocate those funds for the Board of Ed. That's part one. Part two is we are authorizing the city to borrow X number of dollars, right? So it's a two-step process. So could we have it both ways tonight? Could we not approve the reallocation, but approve the total number for bonding? And then you just said that we're not going to go to market for at least a few more months. And perhaps we could have the superintendent and whomever else come back and have a deeper conversation about the reallocation and then reallocate it later, since we've already approved the dollars.
it gets a little tricky.
Of course.
Yeah, nothing's clear cut. The issue there would be if tonight the reallocation doesn't get approved, then those projects that we were looking to reallocate money to, they're on the bond resolution. So now they're not there anymore because the money never got reallocated. I would be okay in that case if you eliminated those projects. You'd have to reduce the amount. We can't add projects that weren't on the bond ordinance tonight because part of the idea is one of the requirements is you have to have a public hearing. And as crazy as it seems, people would say, well, if I knew that project was on, I would have been here or something like that. So the best you could do tonight if you didn't reallocate was reduce the size. I think it's all in the 24-25 fiscal year. Reduce the size of that bonding and then approve that at the lower level.
What if we did the other way? What if we approve this, but then we ask the superintendent to come back and have that conversation? After discussing with him, we decide that, you know what, the Kerrigan projects and the Bailey project really do need to go forward. We can then reallocate the monies through another resolution or another ordinance.
You could approve what you have tonight, and then if you come back, what you'd have to do if you wanted to reverse the reallocation, it would be a two-step process again. You'd reverse the reallocation, and then you would approve bonding for those Kerrigan projects they were talking about tonight to be bonded for in that next step.
Does that screw anything up for you or Mr. Gormany if we do any of those things?
If we went ahead with what's on the agenda tonight, no, that I don't think that would screw up anything. And then, as I said before, depending on the timing when you're looking at this reverse reallocation, I mean, even if we go out to market, if at some point there's a decision made within the city that it's better to spend money on Kerrigan than it is on technology, you could take that money that was earmarked for technology, as long as you have the approvals for the Kerrigan projects, and use it on the Kerrigan project.
Okay, so if we were to go down that path, I mean, I know I'm already a headache to Mr. Gormany at times.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be a bigger headache if we do that.
So no, that's what I was just asking Mr. Lindsay, is that the reallocation is really dealing with 24-25 funding. So again, I think what would really happen is that would just delay slightly if Mr. Cavallero and the Board of Ed wanted to spend that until he came before you guys to talk about the redesignation a little more. But you got to remember the actual borrowing of those funds wouldn't happen until the end of this year
So the first tranche is
for 23,
23,
24. So again, some of those projects got started, so the city spent its own cash anticipating borrowing, and then we're gearing up for other projects. So that's what this first tranche of borrowing that we're doing in March is really dealing with. The redesignation is 24-25, so we could.
And you're not doing that until the fall-ish?
Until next year at the latest, like
next
March of 26.
Next fiscal year or next calendar year?
Calendar year. March
So
of 26 is the latest. February to March of 26 is the latest that we would look to replenish.
So we can approve this tonight, and then we virtually have the rest of this year.
I think we could.
Hash this out with
I
the
think
board.
I can talk to Mr. Cavallaro and the mayor to come and talk about the actual redesignation projects, but we have a little bit of time with that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Chairwoman,
Very welcome, yes.
can the clerk ask a clerical question?
Absolutely.
I just have a process question, maybe for the attorney, because we're not officially voting on a reallocation. This is an actual bond ordinance that was put in for a public hearing. So where in the process is the vote to reallocate the funds? Because there's no separate vote for that.
So that was all presented as one package at the last meeting, which included the reallocation plus the borrowing itself.
And from an attorney standpoint, would that have to be a separate? If the council allocated funds in a budget from 2024, 2025, wouldn't that have to be a separate vote for the council to reallocate those funds separately before we do the bond ordinance in two parts?
I think, in theory, and it was set up, I think, as
needed to come up.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to be such a stick
No,
in the
that's
mud,
fine.
but
That's very fair. Very
Stickler.
fair. Yeah, it was, the idea was set up as two ordinances, one for the reallocation, then the following to be
But it
the
wasn't.
bond. But I think what's here is just the bonds.
right.
Your advantage with what's on the bond ordinance is the way we draft our bond ordinances. It is structured as an appropriation, which is approval to spend money on those projects, and bonding authorization. So even if you just approve the bond ordinance, you would have approvals for the projects that are in the bond ordinances. I guess what would be missing then is we would still have the Kerrigan projects technically not reallocated.
Exactly.
So they would still be out there, no bonding for Kerrigan, but still out there.
Right.
Yeah. So we could do it the way it is, and we can get what we want. The only kind of hitch is these Kerrigan projects that we want to reallocate would still be out there. No bonding authorization for them, though.
So would the council have to do a separate vote to reallocate those funds? And at what point would they need to do that at?
They technically would not have to reallocate anything.
They just wouldn't do the project.
Right. They don't have bonding authorization. Technically, with Kerrigan right now, all you have is the authorization to spend money. You don't have authorization to borrow money to pay for the project. So, I'm sure your finance director would be a little hesitant in going out and spending a lot of money that you have to find a way to pay for.
And I do have another question. So what the brief bonding ordinance that they gave us, it's like a short version. It doesn't. I specifically thought I remembered a certain amount for 2023 and a certain amount for 2024, 2025. But it's in here. It's all lumped together as one.
Okay.
So
I think that's the summary.
it's the summary.
That's permitted by the charter. I have drafted and do have.
Do you have it? Because
Yes.
I'd rather have your version
Yes.
than wherever this
Yes,
came
I
from.
do.
Point of information, Mr. Chairman? Madam Chair? I'm sorry. Point of information. Counselor, it's in the full ordinance package where it references Exhibit A, right? Is that what we're?
Yeah, it's like a 5-page ordinance where the
Right.
last page is, last 2 pages, I believe, are Exhibit A that list all the projects and break it out by year,
Right.
capital bond
And
year.
Kerrigan's not listed in this Exhibit A.
Right.
So so in effect, if we authorize this ordinance, which includes and incorporates Exhibit A, that is in effect approving the reallocation, right?
I don't think it is.
Okay.
I think what it's doing is it's approving bonding for these projects that are on Exhibit A.
Okay.
You're not approving any bonding for Kerrigan. So Kerrigan is, in my mind, technically still in the capital budget, where you've approved you can spend money for it, but you haven't approved borrowing to pay for that expense.
So it's in a state of limbo at the moment.
Yes.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're very welcome. Chairman Pascal.
Thank you. Michael, what is your timeline on this? When does it have to go out?
We are looking towards mid to the end of March. For borrowing, but that's the 23-24 year that we're looking. I mean, we do have presentations that we have to give to the rating agencies and some other documents that we do have to update prior to March, so primarily in February-ish that we have to do. So that's our timeline, but again, I believe there's no nothing critical in regards to this redesignation that should hold us up with.
Okay. So I do remind the chairwoman that you can, since the council does have questions, it seems like they have more questions for Superintendent Cavallaro.
Yes.
And they have questions for our corporation counsel, that you do have the option to hold it to ask said questions. so that they're answered, so that we're not jumping into something that you don't agree with or maybe just don't understand fully.
I agree. There's a lot of questions that have come up, and I just want to be careful. I understand that if we approve it tonight, we're approving the actual money itself, the bond ordinance. However, I don't want anything to happen if we need to reallocate those funds in the future.
So I think for this purpose, and Bill or Mike can correct me if I'm wrong, I think at this purpose, what we really are looking for is just the ordinance with the amounts approved for borrowing, and then we can revisit the project piece related to the reallocation for the Board of Education. I think, and in my opinion, is maybe hearing it in February, we would stick to any timeline or any documentation that's needed that we can update prior to actually going out to bond, and that wouldn't affect our timeline or any borrowing at all.
Okay. Councilman.
Just quick, would that mean that we'd have to have another public hearing?
That's correct.
Right?
Yes.
So you're, and I apologize because it gets confused. That's why you're a lawyer and did your due diligence. So if we do say yes today, and basically you're just saying that we want to pass the ordinance to go out and bond for this money. The allocation part we can deal with after the fact, come March or whatever. Even so, we say yes. You go out, you get a 1.2%. Obviously, throwing that out there, that would be obviously fabulous.
That would be great. I'm acting on that tomorrow.
I would sign it myself. Right. So that's basically all you're asking us for, is to go out and give you the okay to look and get a good rate for us, since we have a good bond rating now.
Correct.
And then the allocation part, if we decide that we want to take that money, and we'd have to go through that process. We'd have to get Neil, we have to get Mr. Cavallero back here and discuss that, and we could rescind or whatever with that.
Correct. The reason I think it's not really an issue with the timing per se is because, again, we're doing 23-24, right?
Right.
And I think the issue that we're looking for the Board of Ed to clarify is happening in the 24-25 cycle. So because we technically really wouldn't be going out to bond for a while on that, I think it gives us some time. Again, we would just look for clarification just because there's documentation and other stuff that goes along with this. But again, I think having another conversation about the reallocation and redesignation really wouldn't hurt our timeline.
Yeah, because obviously that, as you could tell, is now become a necessity, right? That we need to do that. So, all right.
Thank you.
I'm all set with this then. Thank you.
Chairman?
Chairwoman, I'd like to call a caucus at this time, please.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
The time is 8:08 and we're going into caucus.
Okay, we're back from caucus. The time is now 8:31. We are still in the Finance Committee. Chairwoman Akbarali, if you would continue.
Thank you, Chairman. So I would like to amend Communication D, but first I'd like to take back our motion and second.
I take back my second, Madam Chair.
I take back the motion.
Thank you very much. So for Communication D, we are going to take out the 2024-2025 capital budget appropriations and revisit that. So we're going to meet the certain fiscal 2023-2024 amount at $12,450,900.
So if you don't mind, Chairwoman, the motion is to amend Communication D.
Yes.
To read Communication D from the January 13th, 2025 agenda from Michael Gormany, Finance Director, regarding an ordinance authorizing the issuance of $12,450,900 in bonds, plus additional financing costs of the City of West Haven to meet certain fiscal 2023-2024 capital budget appropriations and the making of temporary borrowing for such purposes.
That's correct.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I will make that motion.
Second.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any discussion on this matter? Seeing there are none, all those approved?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any abstentions? Motion carries. The time is now 8:33 and your Committee on Finance is now closed.
Thank you so much. Moving on to Public Lands, Chairman Donovan.
Thank you, Chairman. The time is now 8:33. Committee on Public Lands is now in session. Member present are Councilman Locks, Councilwoman Callahan, Councilman Vargo, myself acting as chair. Councilman Johnstone is absent. We have before us Communication C from Mayor Dorinda Boer regarding a request to refer the proposal from Ideal Group LLC for the redevelopment of Style School to the West Haven Planning and Zoning Commission. I'd like to have a motion to bring this out favorably.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion on this? Steve, yes, if you would like to come up.
Thank you very much, Councilman Donovan. Thank you very much,
Absolutely.
and your members of the Public Lands Committee and the other councilors here in attendance. For the record, I'm Steve Fontana. I'm the city's Director of Economic Development, and I just wanted to speak briefly to and encourage you to support the mayor's motion to refer. As she mentions in her communication to you, this is a very exciting opportunity to return this tremendously historic and beautiful building to productive use, to transform it and bring it to life in a new guise or method. We are pleased about the awardee, and we're looking forward, ideally, to a favorable report from the P&Z and ultimately coming back before you and them to talk about it further. But again, if you have any questions, happy to try to answer them tonight, but just wanted to thank you for the opportunity to speak before you and support the communication.
Thank you, Mr. Fontana. Anybody from the committee have any? Oh, yes, Councilman Locks.
Hey, thanks for coming in tonight. Appreciate it.
Sure.
This is it's very, very exciting. I live 10 houses up on the right-hand side. I've been driving by that building for 30 years, so thrilled that they're coming to West Haven to work on this. Very exciting. I did a drive-by at 349, 351 McKinley, New Haven today. I'm kind of familiar with St. Aidan's Church and the fact that they're divesting those properties, so they gave me a full tour.
Oh.
They didn't. They didn't, but they could have. But they were there working, and then I did a drive-by to 855 State Street, too, and saw that building. So this is, like, very exciting. My question is, what is the relationship between Ideal Group LLC and Seed NH? Do you know?
Seed NH essentially is a partner in this process.
Okay.
Seed NH has the technical expertise.
Okay.
I think Ideal Group is the group formulating and financing the project, but they're relying upon Seed NH's expertise.
Okay.
And so it's I can't speak to the specific legal structure, but it's a
Yep.
partnership, if you
Yeah,
will.
okay. And Seed NH stands for Seed New Haven. Do you know? I was just curious.
I think that's a fair,
Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
a fair assumption.
Yeah, it seems like all those guys are from New Haven. Obviously, they have that connection to, I forget his name, but he was like the head of architecture for Yale University. Cesar, I think it's Cesar Pelli from Argentina, famous architect.
Yes,
So that's
Mr.
that's a great connection.
Mr. Pastor, who's the
Mr. Pastor,
motivating force behind C&H,
Yeah.
worked for Cesar Pelli for a while. So
I just hope Mr. Pastor is running this job.
yes, well, that's the plan.
Okay, good. Yeah, because his name, he was the permit. The permit was in his name on McKinley when I went by there today. So
Yes.
yeah, this is great. I'm like thrilled. This is very exciting for the city. So thanks for making this happen. It's great.
Thanks.
You all set, Councilman? Good. Anybody else? Councilman Vargo.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to, I know that the action item for this evening is very limited. We're just sending it over to P&Z for an opinion. I'm assuming that the developer will be making a presentation before P&Z, and we could also invite the group here to do a similar presentation, answer any questions after P&Z gives us their blessing, assuming it goes forward, right?
Yes, Councilman. The draft schedule that I put together would suggest that the Planning and Zoning Commission, if you make this referral, could schedule the public hearing on it and consider it on February 11th, Tuesday, February 11th. And then if they acted favorably on it and issued a favorable advisory report to you, in theory, you could schedule a public hearing on March 10th, or actually on the 25th, I believe, for March 10th. But in any case, you'd have at least a couple of opportunities to have a public hearing on the record and ask questions and hear from the developers directly.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else on there? Yep. Go ahead, Councilwoman.
Hi, thank
Hello.
you for coming in at, staying so late. How many units are they looking to put in? Do you know?
30.
30.
30.
Okay, okay, perfect.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else from the committee? While we have Mr. Fontana, anybody else from the council have any questions? All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. All right. Seeing no more discussions, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. With that, the Committee on Public Lands is now closed. The time is 8:39. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, and we will reconvene to the whole council at also 8:39. Moving on to unfinished business. I believe the last time the mayor said we will not hear back from this for a little while. Is that correct? On the Lake Street project under unfinished business?
That's correct. I believe so.
That was my understanding, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Why was that? Was it design phase?
Honestly, I would make a motion to take it off.
To take it off?
Take it off.
Okay, we just dropped it.
Yeah.
We drop it for the next meeting.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. On to committee reports. Will the clerk please read communication A and B? Overpayment of
I
refunds
see
into the
that.
record.
I see that. We have communication A from the tax collector regarding overpayment refunds for January 2025, which will be filed with tonight's minutes, and also communication B from the tax collector regarding overpayment refunds for January 2025, which will also be filed with tonight's minutes.
Thank you so much. First up, we have reporting back, Finance Committee, Chairwoman Akbarali, sorry.
It's okay. Thank you, Chairman. To the Honorable City Council of the City of West Haven, your Committee on Finance, to whom was referred the matter from the January 13, 2025 agenda from Michael Gormany, Finance Director, regarding an ordinance authorizing the issuance of $12,450,900 bonds plus additional financing costs of the City of West Haven to meet the certain fiscal 2023-2024 capital budget appropriations and the making of temporary borrowings for such purposes. Proposed bond ordinances provides for the following: authorized bonds for certain capital projects approved and appropriated in the city's fiscal year 2023 to 2024 capital budget of $12,450,900 plus costs of issuance to finance such capital projects in accordance with the requirements of Chapter 109 of the Connecticut General Statutes. Authorizes the mayor, the finance director, and the treasurer, the bond committee, to sell such bonds in a competitive or negotiated offering. Authorizes bonds to be issued pursuant to the terms of the city trust indenture. Authorizes bond committee to issue bond anticipation notes for short-term financing prior to the issuance of the bonds. Authorizes the bond committee to take all necessary actions in connection with the issuance of the bonds, including acting relating to the tax-exempt nature of the bonds, the reimbursement of prior city capital indentures, and those needed to satisfy post-issuance disclosure obligations. Authorizes the mayor, the finance director, and other duly authorized city officials to apply for grants and the capital projects. And the part that I missed, it reports that the committee met on the 27th day of January 2025 to consider this matter. It is a unanimous opinion of the committee that this motion is presented, and I so move.
Thank you very much. I have a motion to approve a matter regarding an amended ordinance authorizing the issuance of bonds plus additional financing costs. Do I have a second? Second. Any discussion?
Thank you,
Councilman Fargo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The reason why we're doing it this way is that we, as a group, still have a lot of questions over the appropriateness of reallocating the funds for Kerrigan and Bailey. We don't want to step on the toes of our counterparts on the Board of Education, but we want to make sure that those buildings are safe and secure for the time being, and really dive into the plan going forward with those buildings. So we don't want to handcuff the city in being reimbursed for the funds that have already been spent, and also the projects that were approved a couple years ago. And since we do have that time, at least myself feel that this is the most appropriate way to go forward, and we could address the 24-25 bonding, over the next couple of months. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Chairwoman, does that conclude the business you had this evening?
That's all. I'm all set. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Next up is Public Lands Committee, Councilman Donovan.
Thank you, Chairman. Stace, I don't need a resolution for this, or
No,
just wing it?
it's just
All right,
a
so-
motion to
Yep.
refer.
All right, so your committee met, Public Lands Committee met on January 27th, 2025, and unanimously passed the motion, Communication C, from Mayor Dorinda Bora regarding the request to refer the proposal from Ideal Group LLC for the redevelopment of Stiles School to the West Haven Planning and Zoning Commission. I so moved.
Thank you. I have a motion to refer a matter regarding a proposal from the Ideal Group LLC. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Councilman, all set?
I am all set.
Thank you. All right, next up we have council liaison reports. Does anybody have any liaison reports? Not this evening? Oh, Mr. Donovan.
I don't have
Councilman
one now. I will definitely have one the next meeting, because I will be going to the P&Z meeting tomorrow to
You promise?
discuss things. So,
All right.
well, Lord willing, I'll be here.
Any other liaison reports? Councilwoman Callahan?
Hi, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, just, I was present at the Allentown Fire Department meeting when we were going over what we talked about tonight. So it's a great program going forward. I think we're all excited about it, and I love the idea about putting it out there for the public to know and to get more knowledge out there. So it was a great meeting, and that was last Tuesday.
Okay.
So that's the 6th district. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Tucker?
And I did attend the Board of Health meeting this past Tuesday, I think it was, and just share with them the information from the committee on the opioid settlement committee, and kind of talk through some of the operations and the plans that they have or they'd like to have going forward with their approach to how we kind of work with those funds in the future. We will be meeting together with Rick Fontana, who has a plan for an approach, and so we're just waiting for the director to come on board. And there was a new person that was recently hired that started with the Board of Health, who is a health advocate. I forget the exact role, but that person started, and so they're just coming along, and I think things are going to be moving pretty quickly ahead once everybody gets in place.
Interesting. Any other liaison reports? Moving on to new business. Any new business this evening? Okay, seeing none, I just want to let you guys know. Next up, we already have Rick Fontana coming to give us a presentation for next meeting. He's putting together something for us, and we have proclamations for the Seahawks for the wonderful season that they had. So we get to look forward to that in 2 weeks. And without further ado, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
And to adjourn.
Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you, everyone.
Chairman.